The Dakota's getting cammed. We're putting them in the engine. These are aftermarket. You guys get it. All right guys, welcome back to the garage. Behind me is my 1995 Dodge Dakota that we're SRT4 swapping. And on the last video, we took a Stratus non-turbo block. We put SRT4 rods and pistons in there, and now we have an assembled bottom end. And in this video, we're gonna finish the assembly of the engine. We gotta get the head assembled, gotta get it bolted to the block so we can get the timing set on, because I'm dying to get this thing back in the truck. Now, I had a subscriber reach out. He said he wanted to donate a set of CROWER cams for the build. So we're gonna do that. We have CROWER valve springs from Modern Performance to go in there. So shout out to Anthony for the donation. I can't wait to hear this thing run. So what we got here is a set of CROWER Stage 1 2-liter dual cam cams. So they're originally for the 2-liter, but they're a custom grind originally sold through Modern Performance. So you can see here, we're dual drilled for the cam magnet. So the cam magnet can go in just like it is on the 2.4. We won't have to mess with the cam sensor or anything like that, but we will have to run the intake gear 180 out. So you can see this is the stock 2.4 intake cam, and this is the 2-liter dual cam intake cam, and the pin is 180 out. So we'll have to run the cam gear upside down, but that's not a big deal. Now, like I said, these started out as CROWER's Stage 1 cams for the 2-liter dual cam, but it's a custom grind sold through Modern Performance way back in the day. So essentially what the specs are is the same duration as the Stage 1 cams, but they have a lot more lift, more like the Stage 2 cams that they offer for the 2-liter. Now, how that compares to CROWER's SRT4 specific cams is they're essentially close in specs, except the SRT4 intake cam from CROWER typically has more lift on the intake side than the exhaust, whereas these are the same for both cams. So what we got is an advertised duration of 234 degrees and 0.396 inches of lift, which is considerably more than the stock 2.4 cams. So while these aren't necessarily turbo cams for the SRT4, I think they'll work just fine. So while they have a little bit more duration than stock, they have a lot more lift than stock. So these cams will breathe pretty well. And to go along with those, got a set of CROWER valve springs from Modern Performance. The lift on these cams is right at the edge of what stock valve springs can handle. So I'm just gonna play it safe, run some valve springs in there. That way we don't have no issues. So I got the head here all cleaned up, ready to go. We start swapping out these valve springs. All right, I went ahead and got one done, but I'll show you guys. Here's my valve spring tool. This is going to sit on the middle of the valve. So once we get that positioned in there, and crank this down on the valve spring, and we just carefully compress the valve spring until the keepers are exposed. There's one. And there's two. We can loosen this up. And there's our valve spring and retainer. And I'm also taking some Scotch-Brite on the valve just to clean it up a little bit. There you go, it's all nice and clean. We throw it back in there. We got a CROWER valve spring, put the retainer back on it, slide it in there, and do the same thing again. Now the fun of putting the retainers back in, which can be kind of a pain. Okay, there's one. All right, now they're both on there. Very carefully and slowly leave the tension on the spring so it catches those keepers. All right, there's 2 done. I got 14 more to go. Using this tool kind of sucks. Having a more specific tool for this head would make it a lot easier, but we have this cheapy $30 tool. It'll do the job. It's just going to take a minute. So let me knock those out. All right, all the valve springs are done. Now that is a pretty tedious process using this style spring compressor, but it's definitely doable. A couple of tips when you're using this. Now, when you saw me do it, say this is your cup side, I was threading it this way towards the spring. And the problem is this likes to walk on the retainer. So what I found works better is if you thread the rod this way against the valve, and this will just gently push on the spring and you won't get it walking around. It's much easier to control that way. So don't do it like I did. Thread towards the valve, put pressure on the valve, and then this will just compress the spring. And of course, a nice magnet to get the keepers out. And I found a couple little pocket screwdrivers with magnets help get them back in. So just a little tip. Now, one thing that did take a lot of time was all the exhaust valves had pitting on the valve seat and the seat in the head. So what I did is just ran some valve lapping compound on all the exhaust valves, clean those up so they seal real well. All the intake valves looked great, so I didn't do those. Let's get this head on the block. All right, first up is our head gasket, and this is just a Felpro Permaseal gasket. And you can see we did throw some copper spray on there just for some reassurance. All right, now for the head. Now I didn't resurface this head. I just cleaned it up real well, used some Scotch-Brite on it. I checked it with a flat edge and some feeler gauges. It was flat, so no need to resurface it. Then these are just Malley factory style head bolts. Okay, as far as torquing these bolts, we're going to start in the center, work our way out. We're going to do 25 foot-pounds, 60 foot-pounds, a second pass of 60 foot-pounds, and then each bolt is going to get a quarter turn. Okay, 25. First pass at 60. Second pass at 60. All right, quarter turn. And we can get all the lifters back in there. Just like that. Followed by all the rockers. Okay, I got all the cam journals lubed up, so now we can set the cams inside the head. I'm going to start laying the cam caps in just real lightly. And I left these all in order the way I took them out, but they are numbered 2, 3, 4, 5 on the right. And there's an arrow pointing which way is forward. And then same thing on the intake side, the left side, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of course they do have arrows also pointing to the front of the engine. Okay, for the intake cam, we're going to start here. Crank these down to 105. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For the exhaust side, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now for the rear cam cap, we're going to put our anaerobic sealant right here in the corner and right on this edge. Then these two bolts get torqued to 205 inch-pounds. And then this one will get torqued to 105. Then for the front cam cap, we got anaerobic sealant in the ends and then right here in the middle here. And again, here you can see the caps are labeled. Left is the intake side. So 2, 3, 4, 5, same thing over here. The right side is exhaust and they're all labeled and numbered. So if you disassemble your engine and get those all mixed up, just keep in mind they're labeled. You'll know exactly where they go. All right, cams are in, all the valve train's done. So now we can focus on the front side of the engine, get all the timing components on, cam gears, all that jazz. And next we do the cam seals and just make sure this lip stays back and don't let it fold forward when you install it. Just like that. And if you have a 36mm axle nut socket, it fits perfectly over the seal and you can just gently tap it in until it's flush with the head and you're good. All right, tensioner. You want to take one of your upper bolts here, just temporarily sit it in there, just to align that hole. And then we can put this bolt in. And that gets torqued to 45 foot-pounds, and you can remove this bolt. All right, next up is water pump, and be very careful that this O-ring stays in place. I actually have a little grease in there, helping hold it in place so it doesn't move. And these get torqued to 105 inch-pounds. Next up is the crank seal. Now we can throw the timing cover on. Small bolts get torqued to 105 inch-pounds, and then these two larger bolts get torqued to 250 inch-pounds. Now we have our idler. And it gets torqued to 45 foot-pounds. All right, crank gear. Now, first thing I'm going to do is put the keyway in there. Lightly tap it so it's seated all the way in the crank. And we'll take a little oil and oil up the crank itself. We take our gear, get it lined up with the keyway. Now, the last thing you want to do is start hammering on this to seat it onto the crank. I know some guys do it that way, but if you do that, you're going to be pushing the crank against the thrust bearings. So, not a good idea. We're going to press it on. Okay, now there is a special tool for this, but we're just going to use this shorty 32mm socket. It fits right on there. I got an extra long bolt with a washer and a nut, and you can see I have it all greased up. Essentially what we're going to do is thread this in. Now that that bolt's bottomed out in the crank, we can turn this nut and hopefully just press that on. Okay, you can see we got the gear all the way on. Now, before I took this off, I actually measured the gap between the gear and the oil pump, and I had about 30 thousandths. I'm stopping at 35 just because I saw evidence of the belt rubbing the timing cover and the oil pump right here. So we're gonna leave it there. And then once we get the belt on with the cam gears, we'll rotate the engine a few times and see where the belt rides on the cam gears. And if we need to adjust that either in or out, we can do it then. All right, cam gears. Now the exhaust side is gonna go on like normal. But the intake side, since we're using a 2-liter cam, we're going to do it upside down. Now, in order to hold these cams, you need a tool to sit inside these holes. That way you can hold it to torque them down. All I did was take a 1/4-inch extension, sacrificed it, cut the end off, and shaved it till it fit nice and snug in there. Then I just stuffed some rags in here. And then as I torqued the cam, you know, it rotated and then it sat on here and I was able to torque it. So I know there's a lot of different tools to torque down these cams, and you can buy specific tools to hold the cams, but that's all I did. Now, like I said, we're using 2-liter based cams. So intake cam is upside down. Our timing marks do not match up, but these cam gears are pretty simple to line up. Now, before we begin, we're going to turn the exhaust cam a 1/2 tooth clockwise, just like that. And then when we put the belt on, we can turn it back to take up the slack. Now for the crank sprocket, you can see our mark on the sprocket, mark on the oil pump. Now those line up, but what you want to do is line up that arrow with the back side of this tooth on the gear. Not right on it, but back edge. So that's wrong, that's right. So we'll start down here on the crank gear and work our way up to the intake cam. You see it lines up perfectly on the intake cam. And then we lined up on the exhaust cam. Slide it over the tensioner. And then we're going to counterclockwise on the exhaust cam to take the slack out. Just like that. We should be able to take our cam lock tool, Slide it right in there so those cams are locked together. We know they're in time. Crank gear is in time. It's still on the back edge of that tooth on the gear. So now we can do our tensioner. All right, now we can set our tension. Just put our Allen in here. We line up this tang with that opening in the tensioner. Then we're going to torque that to 220 inch-pounds. All right, now with everything set, we should be able to turn this over and check to make sure everything stays in time. So there we go. All right, our cams are in line. And there's one full rotation and we're lined up. So I think we're good. The belt seems to be riding perfectly centered on the cam gears. So I'm going to keep turning it over just to make sure that's where the belt stays. That way we know we don't need to adjust the crank sprocket, and then we'll call it good. Now this is going to be a little different than SRT4 because this is a Stratus engine, but this is where you could put on your engine mount bracket. See, mine's a little different, and I would say better looking than the SRT4 stuff. And these bolts get torqued to 45 foot-pounds. And now the lower timing cover can go on, as well as the upper timing cover. Then the water pipe can go on. I got a new O-ring and I did lube it up a little bit to try to keep it from trying to roll as we press this in. And now we can do the cam magnet, and we need to use those two holes right there. That should work with the 2.4 cam sensor. And that bolt gets torqued to 30 inch-pounds. You do not want to over tighten it. You could break the magnet. Then of course the cam sensor can go on. All right, engine assembly is finally done. Now check this out. You know, I just had to. I had to hang the manifolds on, especially the turbo. Man, to see it finally come to life is freaking awesome. Changing the oil might be a little difficult, but those are minor details. And I think I kind of want the turbo to sit higher, so I might try to find an elbow to come off the manifold to sit the turbo a little higher. That way it matches the throttle body. But man, I can't wait for this to be sitting in here. So next video, clutch and flywheel on the engine, transmission bolted to the engine, transmission and engine bolted into the truck for the final time. So things are getting exciting. Subscribe if you haven't, hit that bell, and I'll see you guys on the next one.